Hi, my name is Patrick van Dorp. I'm a cloud solution architect for partners in Microsoft the Netherlands. And in this session, I want to talk to you about the value that Azure Arc brings. Azure Arc, I want to start with the notion of cloud as being a model and not a place. And this is really important. If we look at our customer environments, and we look what they typically own, then they will own on-premises clouds. Whether it's in their own data centers or on the edge. Those on-premises clouds consist of a wide variety of hardware and software technologies. All of these hardware and software technologies require different governance models, and they have different security controls. And they will have different deployment models. And this will complicate the way that you manage and maintain your entire IT environment. Other than the on-premises clouds, there's also public clouds, right? And like Google, AWS, Alibaba. These clouds also require different governance models. They have different security controls. And different deployment models, adding to the complexity of the customer environment. Then there's the Microsoft Cloud, which is also a public cloud, obviously, but it bridges the public cloud and the private cloud. And it offers you a lot of controls to integrate all of these various locations into one management plane. If we're talking about Azure Arc, then Azure Arc is like the glue between all of those environments. Azure Arc enables you to gain insights into all of your compute and storage infrastructure that you have running across all of your clouds, on premises and on the edge. It also enables you to dictate a single infrastructure security baseline. If you are aware of our cloud adoption framework, you will probably have heard of the enterprise scale landing zones. And this is an architectural pattern that consists of a lot of best practices regarding public cloud, but they could also apply to on-premises and to edge locations. And with Azure Arc, you can actually do that because you can tie all of those locations into one single architecture. And lastly, we can also deploy Azure services to all of these clouds. So taking full benefits of all the platform as a service possibilities that the Azure services offer, but deploy them in your own data center or deploy them to the edge to improve certain real-time scenarios or to satisfy certain regulatory compliance rules. So if we look at Azure Arc, we can see that it consists of 4 pillars. It consists of a pillar for servers, it consists of a pillar for containers, a pillar for data services, and a pillar for application services. If we take a look at these services, then we can see that the benefits are that we gain central visibility and operations and compliance, right? So we take control of all of our IT infrastructure and all of our IT assets that we have within our company. It enables us to build cloud-native applications at scale anywhere, right? So maintaining a Kubernetes cluster, for instance, to run containers can be done in a lot of different ways, and Azure Arc can help you standardize the way that you're working and making sure that you have a certain baseline and a certain uniformity across all of your services. And you can run Azure services anywhere. So you can run the Azure data services like a managed SQL instance or a Postgres hyperscale cluster. Anywhere. You can run it on your own data center, you can run it on the edge, you can run it in a public cloud of your choice, It doesn't matter, and you will have the same configuration and management controls. Also for application services like app service, the typical platform as a service services that you can find in Azure, a lot of them you can now deploy also on the edge, for instance, or on our competitor clouds, or just on premises. And it will help you with accomplishing a uniform way of working.
Most companies have an existing portfolio of applications, databases, and server infrastructure that's been growing over the years. Cloud services have caused an explosion of even more resources created in silos across data centers and various cloud providers. Edge scenarios are poised to create an even bigger sprawl. Azure has customer resources running around the world. Hundreds of millions of Azure resources are organized, governed, and secured daily by customers using Azure Management. Customers have asked us how to bring Azure Management to all their entire IT estate. Azure Arc extends Azure's control plane to manage servers and Kubernetes clusters across on-premises, multi-cloud, and edge. This empowers operators to organize, secure, and govern resources anywhere, and developers to safely deploy their applications and Azure data services to any infrastructure. Azure Arc makes it easy to adopt cloud practices on-premises and other clouds, all with central IT guidance and governance from Azure. Welcome to Azure Arc.
So if we take a closer look at the individual pillars, then we can see that there's Azure Arc-enabled servers. If we look at Azure Arc-enabled servers, we can see three main benefits that we can get from it. Arc-enabled servers offers the possibility to deploy extensions to our servers running anywhere, right? So if you have a virtual machine running in your own data center, you can enrich that virtual machine using VM extensions that you are probably already aware of in Azure. Another thing is policies, right? You can set policies like you would set policies on your Azure machines. You can set policies on your local machines, and automation. So if we look at some examples here. With extensions, for instance, you can implement a uniform way of logging and monitoring with Azure Monitor. So you can just add an extension to a virtual machine that is running on-premise through the Azure portal, and it will enable the same logging experience that you have in Azure. And you can also aggregate the logging and monitoring data, the metrics and the logs. Aggregate them with metrics and logs from services and machines that are running in Azure or in other cloud environments. Also, this way, through extensions, you can configure third-party agents. So let's think of a scenario where you already are using Ansible, or you are already using Puppet or Chef, and you need an agent deployed on a virtual machine. Through extensions, you can do that really easily, right? And in a very uniform way. You can also standardize the configuration and the server configuration and the application configuration across environments. So let's say you want all your Windows machines to have a certain registry setting set to a certain value. You can do that by implementing an extension that actually does that for you. If we look at policies, think of enforcing password complexity. Think of all of the various locations where you may have virtual machines running or bare metal machines running. And you need to ensure a certain security baseline where a certain password complexity is required. With Azure policies, you can, and in combination with Azure Arc, you can actually enforce those policies and enforce certain restrictions on those virtual machines. And this works for Windows machines, but it also works for Linux machines, all the same. Standardized registry keys, like you could do this with extensions, but you can also create like a policy that does that for you. You can enforce Windows Defender virus scanner or set firewall rules. You can make sure that security patching is always done at a certain time when a patch is released. You can also integrate with automation, with Azure automation, and this allows you to control your operating system updates, for instance. You can also keep an inventory of all of the software and applications that are running on the virtual machine. So you will get a tremendous amount of insights into your IT landscape, and you can see which applications are running where. And because of that insight, and because everything is integrated in Azure, you can also add tags to it. And through the tagging, you can actually attribute certain costs or certain security threats or certain performance penalties or I don't know what you may encounter in your environment, but you can attribute that to certain parts of your organization or certain environments or you name it. And lastly, you can track all of the changes made to a server, which is really valuable to troubleshoot any issues if they arise. Next, let's take a look at Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a container orchestration mechanism which adds an additional layer of redundancy to your already redundant cloud infrastructure. But you can also run this on in any location. So you can run this on a Raspberry Pi cluster. You can run this on a virtual machine or bare metal. It doesn't matter. You can run this in any cloud where that you can imagine, and it's really popular. It's a really popular orchestration technology to run your containers on. With Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, we can take any Kubernetes cluster that you may have deployed anywhere and include it in the Azure Resource Manager. So, and what that means is that it will actually be visible in the Azure portal next to all of your other Azure resources or your other Azure Arc resources. And again, here we see that we can add extensions, we can add policies, and we can do something like GitOps. If we look at the benefits here, the extensions offer a lot of the same of what the extensions for servers offer, right? You can implement a uniform way of logging and monitoring. And this logging and monitoring is even uniform to the way that we log and monitor the servers that we discussed earlier. It allows for easy deployment of Azure resources or Azure services across different environments. So I manage the data services and the application services pillars. You can use extensions actually to deploy those services to anywhere you like. You can integrate Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes clusters with Azure Security Center and Azure Lighthouse to guarantee compliancy. This is really valuable because you can actually set a security or a compliancy baseline. And this will be validated at all times. So if anyone, anywhere would make a change to that environment that would be in conflict with the baseline, then you would be alerted to that. Now, if we look at policy, some examples of that to think of is prevent containers running as root. The easiest way to run a container is just run it, and then it will run with root credentials. And that means that container has special privileges on the host virtual machine that it runs on. And that means that a malicious code could potentially reach certain parts of the operating system or certain parts of other containers that it's not allowed to do so. It's a really easy fix, but enforcing this principle and enforcing that containers cannot run as root is a very good example of how you can set this baseline through policy as well. You can do this in Azure already, but through Azure Arc you can do this on any Kubernetes cluster that you have running anywhere. And this is just one example of how you can define and enforce security principles across different environments. Another one is enforcing threat protection. Protection using Azure Defender. With Azure Defender, we will spot malicious code very quickly, and you will get notified by that. And this is also something that you can enforce on all of your clusters, right? So that no one can accidentally forget to install threat protection on their cluster. And lastly, we have GitOps. GitOps is a fairly new principle of adding the state of your Kubernetes cluster into a version control system. And like infrastructure as code, where you create a definition of your infrastructure in a text file, and you store that in a version control, and you have certain systems that can actually make that definition into something that is real, a real virtual machine or a real service running somewhere. The same thing can be done for containers that are deployed in Kubernetes. Once you have a Kubernetes cluster running and you have a lot of containers deployed there, it can be hard to keep track of which containers were deployed, which versions and stuff like that. Using a principle like GitOps can actually help you do that, right? So, and you can make changes to your Kubernetes environment in the text files, check them in or commit them to the version control system, and automatically those changes will be executed and everything in the cluster. And the cluster will be updated so that it reflects what's in the text files that you created. So that leaves you with a single source of truth of not only your infrastructure, if you're using infrastructure as code, but also what is living on your Kubernetes cluster. It also allows for very consistent deployment. So you can imagine that if you have this GitOps principle and you have a number of Kubernetes clusters running across different locations, different types of hardware, different cloud models, then whenever you make an update to that single source of truth, that single source of truth will be executed and updating all of those Kubernetes clusters at the same time in the same way, right? So it's very consistent. Moving on to Azure Arc enabled data services.
Whether your data workloads are on-premises, span multiple clouds, or live on the edge, Azure Arc enabled data services deliver the operational cost benefits of Azure wherever your data resides. Bring cloud innovation to any infrastructure with access to the latest Azure capabilities on data services. Your on-premises data workloads will always stay current thanks to automated patching and in-place upgrades based on your policy. And there's no more end of support because Azure SQL Managed Instance is evergreen. With cloud automation and elastic scale, easily spin up instances with high availability in seconds. On-premises workloads can scale up, down, and out without application downtime. Plus, customer-managed environments benefit from the unique high performance of Azure PostgreSQL Hyperscale. Put your data management under one roof where you'll see on-premises and cloud databases in Azure Portal or Azure Data Studio for a single view and consistent control. You'll have the same management experience whether you're running Azure SQL or Postgres with backup and monitoring both locally and in the cloud. For the first time, all your data is secured wherever it sits, with Azure Arc extending advanced data security to your entire estate. Even if you face intermittent connection or are in a totally disconnected environment, Azure Arc has you covered, providing the same set of management capabilities for your local data. And to top it off, you get a cloud billing model that covers your on-premises infrastructure. Pay for what you use for better cost efficiency. Get started with a free preview today. Bring the innovation of Azure to where you need it most with Azure Arc enabled data services.
So in the video, we saw these benefits for Arc-enabled data services, right? Like automated patching, continuous support. There's no end of support for your data services that you have running in your own data center or somewhere else. It offers a cloud billing model, which means that your licenses can be included through a cloud model. and you pay through your cloud account. It gives a unified management experience. So if you are already accustomed to using the SQL managed instances or the Postgres hyperscale clusters in Azure, you will be able to manage them in the same way through Azure Arc whenever they're running on-prem. Right? So that's a big advantage there as well. You will get the cloud automation and elasticity as well. So just move a slider and you will get more instances, right? Or just define a new SKU and you will get more resources. With Postgres SQL hyperscale, you will get the benefit of the high performance of that cluster. And again, combined with that elasticity, you can optimize the use of your infrastructure. There's a unified way of backing up your databases and monitoring the databases. You can do this you can back it up on-prem, but you can also back it up in the cloud. You can support offline scenarios as well. So if you have deployed a database in an edge location, let's say a big container ship or something, and connectivity is not there 100% of the time, right? You can still operate and you can still make sure that you operate in a very safe and reliant way. And finally, there's advanced threat protection that you can enable for Azure Arc enabled data services as well. Azure Arc enabled application services is fairly new. It's still in preview, but it does show exactly where we're headed with this. With Arc enabled application services, we can see at this moment we have 6 services that are enabled through Arc. Azure App Service, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Functions, API Management, Event Grid, and Machine Learning. And you can enable those by adding extensions to your Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes cluster. The benefit of this is that if you are accustomed to using these services or you want to make use of the benefits that these services offer, you can do now without going full public cloud, right? You can do this on-prem. You can do this on the edge, on the factory floor, or wherever you need these services, you can implement them. And that is a big advantage of these Azure Arc enabled application services. You will really get a single pane of glass, right? You will see all of these services in your Azure portal, and they will be visible, and you can apply policies to them. And you can build on the existing knowledge that you have of Azure Cloud Services and extend it anywhere. Right? So if you know how to deploy an application to Azure App Service, you can now do that anywhere. You can bring the advantages of platform as a service to your own data centers or to edge locations. And you can modernize your application portfolio by while adhering to regulatory compliance. Right? So you can modernize your existing applications while, but you can do it on-prem if compliance requires that. And remember, you can do this anywhere. Wherever you have a data center or wherever you have compute resources, you can make this work. It doesn't have to be an Azure data center, and that's one of the benefits. You can have Azure anywhere right now. So you can have it on-prem, you can have it on the edge, you can have it in one of our competitor clouds, or you can have it in the Microsoft cloud. Azure Arc will span all of these clouds and tie them together into one single pane of glass. And it will give you insights into all of the compute and resources, storage resources that you have running across all of those locations. It enables you to define a single infrastructure security baseline, implement those enterprise-scale landing zones, no matter where your applications or your services are running. And you can modernize all of your services and applications and make have full benefit of the platform as a service services that we offer in Azure, but in any of these locations. All right, if you want to know more about this, you can reach out to your Microsoft partner contact, and they will tell you all about it, right? And we would like to have this discussion with you. If in the meantime you want to read up on this and you want to learn more about Azure Arc, the principles, if you want to learn more about the Cloud Adoption Framework, or the individual pillars that there are, here are the links to resources where you can read up. And remember, cloud is a model, not a place.